I hadn't planned on staying long. My visit home was supposed to be a quick stop. 2 nights, maybe 3, just to check in, sleep in my own bed for once, and pretend I still belonged in this neighborhood. College had made everything feel distant, quieter, like the town I grew up in had shrunk while I'd been gone. But here I was again, pulling into the same driveway, the same crack in the sidewalk, the same sound of the old gate squeaking open. I was supposed to meet up with Jake, my best friend since 6th grade. But when I rang the bell, it wasn't his voice I heard from the other side. It was hers. The door creaked open, and there she stood, his older sister. I froze for a split second. She wasn't how I remembered her. She used to wear glasses, oversized sweaters, hair in a loose ponytail. She used to ignore us, mostly, always locked away in her room with music bleeding under the door. But now she looked different. Still casual, barefoot in leggings and a dark green hoodie, but she stood taller somehow. Her eyes sharper, the ponytail gone, her hair loose and a little messy, like she'd just woken up from a nap she didn't plan to take. "Whoa," she said with a crooked smile. "Look who decided to show up." I laughed under my breath. "Hey, didn't know you still lived here." She leaned against the doorframe. "Temporarily. Jake didn't tell me you were coming." "Figures," I muttered. He said 3. "I'm early." She stepped aside. "Well, he's not home. Gym shift. You can wait if you want." I hesitated just for a second, then stepped inside. The house smelled exactly the same. Coffee, laundry detergent, and that faint woody note I could never place. Nothing had changed in the entryway. Same mirror, same rug, but it all felt smaller now, and she felt larger in it. We walked into the kitchen. She moved like she owned the space, like she'd taken over since her parents moved out a year ago. She pulled a mug from the shelf, poured herself some tea from a white ceramic pot, and without asking, poured another for me. "I still remember you hating green tea," she said, handing it over. I blinked. "You remember that?" She gave me a quick glance. "You complained about it for 2 years straight. Every time you came over." I smirked and took a sip, still bitter. We sat at the island. The quiet between us was natural at first, 2 people filling time. But then she asked about school, about my major, my plans, my future. Her questions weren't shallow. They weren't just polite. She listened. I steady. No distractions. And I started noticing things I shouldn't have. The way she held her cup with both hands, thumbs brushing the rim. The way the hoodie slipped slightly off her shoulder when she reached for a spoon. The small scar on her knee that I never noticed before. And the way she looked at me, not like someone trying to remember a childhood friend, but like someone taking inventory. At one point, I caught myself staring. She noticed, but she didn't flinch. She just raised an eyebrow, half a smirk forming. "You're quiet," she said. "I don't talk as much as I used to." "No," she replied. "You've definitely changed." I wasn't sure what to say to that, so I drank my tea. She stood. "Jake said he might be late. If you want, you can hang out upstairs. I think your old spot is still covered in posters." I smiled. That room barely had space for a chair. She nodded. "Then come to mine. It's bigger. You can wait there." That gave me pause. She seemed to notice. "Don't worry. I don't bite." I followed her up the stairs, the familiar creak of each step bringing back flashes of years past. Sneaking sodas into Jake's room, watching late-night movies, trying to act cool whenever she walked by in high school. But now I was behind her, noticing things I didn't before. Her door was open. Clean room. A few candles on the desk. A sketchbook on the bed. Nothing too revealing. Just hers. She motioned toward a chair near the window. "You can sit. Or snoop. I won't tell." I laughed and sat. She kicked off her slippers, walked to the closet, and pulled out a box. I was going through some old stuff anyway. You can help if you're bored. Inside the box, photos, CDs, a few notebooks, a broken necklace. She sat cross-legged on the bed, flipping through them. I stayed in the chair, watching, sipping the tea that had already gone cold. This one, she said, holding up a faded photo, was taken after you spilled soda all over the couch. I winced. That was an accident. Sure it was. We both laughed. Then came a longer silence. She looked up from the box, eyes meeting mine again. You look different, she said, voice softer now. Older. I feel it, I replied. She tilted her head. You still act like the quiet kid who used to hide behind Jake. I shook my head. Not anymore. Another pause. She stood, walked to the closet, pulled out a hoodie, her own, and tugged it over her head slowly. A smooth, casual movement, but it felt deliberate. She turned halfway back toward me, voice low. You don't have to stay, you know. I don't mind, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Good. And then she said it quiet, almost like a test. Close the door first. I didn't move right away. She didn't smile. And I felt something shift in the air. Something I couldn't explain but couldn't ignore. I stood there for a second, fingers resting on the edge of the door, unsure if I'd misheard her. But she didn't repeat herself. She didn't move either. She just looked at me with that same unreadable calm, like she was waiting to see what I'd do next. So I closed the door. No click, no dramatic slam, just the soft pull of wood and air, sealing us inside. She turned away like it was nothing, sat back on the bed, legs folded under her, pulling one of the old notebooks onto her lap. I stayed near the wall, heart tapping faster than I liked to admit, trying to find a reason for the thud in my chest that wasn't what it clearly was. You okay? She asked, not looking up. Yeah. You sure? I nodded. Just surprised. By what? I tried to find a safe answer. Didn't expect you to remember me like this. I figured you'd just wave and disappear into your room like you used to. She gave a quiet laugh. You really think I didn't notice you back then? I glanced at her. You always looked busy. Annoyed, even. I was pretending. She flipped a page, not looking at me. I used to hear you and Jake trying to act cool whenever I passed the door. You thought you were so slick. I rubbed the back of my neck, grinning. We were idiots. Yeah, but you were cute. I froze. She said it lightly, like it didn't matter, but it landed like a stone in my chest. She finally looked up. You're still kind of cute. I tried to keep my voice steady. Kind of. She smiled, and for the first time I didn't recognize the expression. It wasn't teasing. It wasn't mocking. It was something in between, testing, maybe, or daring. You're not the kid I remember, she said. Not even close. I sat back down in the chair, trying to ground myself. I don't feel like a kid anymore. I can tell. She leaned back on her hands. Her hoodie slipped up slightly at the waist. I didn't mean to notice, but I did. She didn't miss it. Her eyes locked on mine, and I couldn't look away this time. You know, she said, Jake always acted like he had to protect you, like you were this soft, awkward little brother he never asked for. I said, soft, awkward. Not anymore. There it was again, that pause, that shift in the air like the temperature had changed without the thermostat moving. Something between us had opened, and neither of us had the tools to close it again. She stood, walked to the desk, and picked up a photo frame. I recognized the picture immediately, one of us from years ago at the lake. Me shirtless, skinny and pale. Her in an oversized flannel, holding a soda and rolling her eyes at the camera. You hated this day, she said. Because Jake pushed me in the water. No, she said, turning back to me. Because you thought I saw you fall. I mean, you did. I did. She nodded. And I laughed. But not for the reason you think. She sat back down, closer now. No more desk between us. Just space. Small space. I never saw you the way Jake did, she added. You were quiet, but you noticed things. You looked people in the eye. You were never really a kid. I was to you, I said. She looked at me like that statement didn't sit right. Not really. I just didn't think I was allowed to look back. Another silence. This one longer. Thicker. What changed? I asked. She shrugged. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'm just bored. Maybe you're different. Maybe you are too. She considered that. Maybe. I leaned forward slightly. So what does this mean? Her voice lowered. It doesn't have to mean anything. I don't believe that. She looked down at her hands. Neither do I. I exhaled, staring at the closed door. The quiet was louder than anything. Then she stood again. Slowly. This time not toward the closet, but toward me. She stopped just in front of the chair. My knees brushed the back of her legs. I never said thank you, she said. For what? For not being like the others. For noticing. I looked up at her. Her eyes searched mine, not flirtatious, not aggressive, just open. I used to think I was imagining it, she said. The way you looked at me when you thought no one saw. I wasn't exactly subtle, I admitted. No, but it was different. She tugged slightly at the hoodie sleeves. Then, without breaking eye contact, she reached for the hem and pulled it off. Slowly, deliberately, not like someone undressing, not to reveal anything, just to take it off. She stood in a fitted tank top underneath, one strap slipping slightly off her shoulder. Her hair was loose now, half falling in front of her face. She dropped the hoodie onto the bed and looked at me again. I wanted to see if you'd still stare. I am. She stepped back, sat on the edge of the bed, hands behind her. Good. I didn't move from the chair. Couldn't. Every part of me was tense, caught between wanting to say something and not wanting to break whatever fragile moment had settled between us. She sat there quietly, her fingers resting on the edge of the bed behind her, her tank top loose around her collarbone, her eyes never leaving mine. I used to wonder, she said, if you looked at me like that because I was older, or because I was me. I didn't know the difference back then, I replied. But now I do. She gave a small nod, then tilted her head slightly, watching me with that same unreadable calm. You're not leaving, are you? Not unless you tell me to. Her lips curved, barely. I won't. I stood up slowly, not out of confidence but caution. Like a single wrong move would shatter whatever invisible thread tied us together. She didn't flinch. If anything, she leaned back slightly, her chin lifting just enough to feel like permission. I sat beside her on the edge of the bed. We didn't touch. Our arms were close, but not quite touching. She smelled faintly of warm laundry and vanilla, and it made my heart thud harder than anything else. She exhaled. This is stupid. I know. I should stop. You haven't. No, she whispered. I haven't. We sat in that silence for what felt like minutes. I could feel the heat of her skin near mine, the tension in the way she curled her fingers into the blanket, the quickening pace of her breath. Why now? I asked. After all this time? She didn't look at me right away. Because I don't think I'd forgive myself if I didn't let it happen once. I blinked. Let what happen? Her eyes finally met mine again. Steady. Serious. Whatever this is. Whatever it turns into. Even if it's just this one moment? She nodded. Even then. My hand brushed hers. Not planned, not careful, just a nervous shift in weight, and she didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers curled slowly around mine. Firm, warm, sure. We stayed like that, side by side on the bed, saying nothing. Then she turned slightly toward me. Her leg bent, her knee just grazing mine. Her eyes searched my face. Not for answers, but for honesty. I gave it to her without words. She leaned in a little and stopped. Still sure? She asked. I didn't answer with words either. I leaned in slowly. My forehead touched hers. We sat there like that, breathing the same space, hearing each other's heartbeat in the quiet room. It was delicate, like standing on a frozen lake, listening to the ice beneath us whisper. She pulled back the smallest bit. Her voice was almost soundless. This doesn't leave this room. I know. If Jake. He won't. She hesitated. Then, finally, she moved closer, her lips just barely brushing mine. Not a kiss, just the shape of one, the idea of one. It was careful, intentional, and it was enough to turn everything electric. I kissed her, slow, uncertain at first, like testing if this was real. But she kissed back with something deeper, like it had been waiting. She pulled away just slightly. Still just curious? Not anymore. Her smile this time was real. But we didn't move fast. We didn't rush. It wasn't about crossing some line or racing toward something forbidden. It was about soaking in a moment that neither of us thought we'd ever live. One that couldn't be replicated or explained. I traced the edge of her shoulder with my fingertips. She closed her eyes. Then there was a noise downstairs. Keys. A door. She stiffened instantly. I froze. We stared at each other, breath caught in our throats. Then, in one smooth motion, she stood, grabbed her hoodie off the bed, and threw it back on, tugging the hood up just as the footsteps hit the stairs. She looked back at me, voice low and firm. Not a word. I nodded. Her door opened, casual now, just as Jake's voice echoed from down the hall. You here, man? Cleared my throat. Yeah, just got in. Jake stepped into the hallway. Sis, you home? She called out, voice calm. Yep, just organizing my closet. Jake appeared in the doorway, grinning. You already catching up? Just got here, I said. He looked between us. Cool, let's go downstairs. I got beer. She gave me a brief glance. All that fire, all that heat, buried under calm again. Like nothing happened. But I saw it in her eyes. We both knew the truth. We went downstairs like nothing happened. Jake cracked open 2 beers, tossed me one, and flopped onto the couch. He started talking about some guy we both knew from high school getting engaged, showing me a picture on his phone. I laughed when I was supposed to, nodded, reacted, but I wasn't really there. She never came down. I could feel her absence like static behind my eyes. Her voice, her closeness, the way her hand had curled around mine. It all played in a loop under Jake's casual chatter. I wasn't sure if she was hiding in her room, waiting for us to leave, or just pretending the last half hour hadn't happened. I stayed for an hour, maybe 2, long enough to not raise questions. Long enough for Jake to lose interest and scroll through TikTok while I sat on the edge of the couch, tapping my fingers against the bottle. When I finally stood up, he barely looked away from his screen. Heading out. Yeah, got an early thing tomorrow. Cool. Hit me up later this week. I will. I made my way to the hallway. Her door was still closed. I hesitated for half a second in front of it. No sound inside. No movement. I didn't knock. Didn't say anything. I just left. The night air was sharp when I stepped outside. Fall was setting in early, and I hadn't brought a jacket. I walked slower than usual, like my legs were trying to figure out what the rest of me was feeling. By the time I got home, I still hadn't made sense of it. I didn't sleep much. I laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, every second of that afternoon playing back in high definition. Her voice, her expression, the exact way she had said, "Close the door first." It wasn't a game. It wasn't nothing. But it wasn't something either. Not yet. The next morning, I woke up to a message. No name. Just, "You left your charger. Want me to drop it off or keep it hostage?" I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. "Guess I'll have to come back for it." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then came back, then, "Try knocking this time." I smiled. The rest of the week passed in a blur. I didn't mention her to Jake. Didn't ask if she said anything. He didn't seem to notice anything different, which meant we had done a good job pretending. But every night we texted. Sometimes short, sometimes long. Sometimes she'd ask what I was listening to. Sometimes I'd ask what she was reading. Sometimes she'd send a message like, "Still thinking about that silence?" And I'd respond, "Me too." And that was enough. We didn't talk about what came next. We didn't define anything. But the door had closed, and neither of us had tried to reopen it the same way. The following weekend, Jake was working late, and she texted, "Come by if you're bored. I'm not wearing the hoodie this time." My heart jumped. I took my time walking there. When I knocked, she opened the door before I could even lower my hand. She stood there in a loose t-shirt and leggings, barefoot, hair messy like she hadn't left the house all day. "Forgot what knocking sounds like," she teased. I stepped inside. She closed the door behind me. This time I didn't need to be told.